Checking for sound, 1, 2, 3.
Can hear you, Honorable Mani.
Greetings, DM. We haven't seen you in a while.
And then how are you? Can
Good,
you
and
put
you?
these again? Now
Eh?
I'm somewhere in there. Maruska Sama. How are you, comrade? Are you
No.
part of this committee?
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah.
I'm in trouble with you. I'm in trouble with you. Good to see you, man.
You know, same here. No, don't worry. I'm a friendly person. I just want things right. That's all. Yeah.
And you know, I'm in Bloemfontein. We had an energy summit. So I'm actually in transit to the airport now. So
Wow.
I slept in this hotel. So I just asked for a corner. So you'll see people passing because there's everybody going. Yeah.
Okay.
I told the chair in the morning to say, hey,
okay.
Yeah. No, good to see you.
Yeah. No, same here. Same here.
Sharp, sharp.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Good morning, Chairperson. Good morning, Chair.
Morning, colleagues. Good morning. Good morning, Ms. Moy. I think we're ready to start. Just flight the agenda for a second. Thank you. Morning, colleagues, and welcome everybody. The time is just 2 minutes past 9. We're ready to start our meeting. Are there any apologies, Ms. Moy?
Thank you, Chairperson. No, Chairperson, there are no apologies.
Okay, thank you. The agenda would have been circulated and sent to everybody a while back, and it remains the same agenda. Today is a main item is a presentation on the monitoring of the DDMs. And I'm hoping that both the ministry and the department are here and ready to lead us into that presentation. I have not seen the minister. Is the minister here? Is the deputy minister here?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here, Slalo.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the DG has the apology of the minister, but I don't have. I know the DG is also in the platform.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Minister. So in the absence of the minister, we'll ask you and the DG to lead us in the presentation.
Thanks very much, Chairperson, and good morning to our whip and the members of the portfolio committee. Chair, my team is also led
Recording
by
in progress.
Our DG, Dr. Robert Nkuna. Chair, you'll remember that the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation was created to make sure that we plan centrally, but also to make sure that we monitor and evaluate the implementation of all APPs at national and provincial level and the implementation of the SDBIP at local government level. Our role is to monitor, but we also have a role to monitor the departments in as far as the establishment of district development model is concerned. Now, this is a new concept which the president announced in 2019, and many of our municipalities are still grappling to understand the role of the DDM and how it should be coordinated. As DPME, we take that responsibility, knowing that the Minister of COGTA is the one responsible for the implementation of the DDM. So what we have also done, Chair, was to make sure that we are on top of the situation to go around the country, especially when evaluations were done in many of our municipalities. And I'll give an example of one of the municipalities called Fezile Dabi, which is a district and have some local municipalities under it. It was one amongst many municipalities that could not qualify on one plan, one budget. So we then took it amongst ourselves as the department to say, let's use this as a case study, and especially because Free State municipalities are almost in the red. So we did that and complimented COGTA because we wanted to help municipalities to be on par with what is required. Now, the portfolio committee will also remember that given the challenges we are going through and us wanting to check on impact when budgets are implemented, many of the municipalities and departments could not come into the party. And that's why we were introducing the new bill that will enforce the role of planning, monitoring, and evaluation, but that will also help in ensuring that we mobilize departments to be part of the GDM. The observation we have made is that municipalities, in as much as they are reaching out, provincial and national departments are not coming to the party. But the other issue, because I was in Mangaung from Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, no, Monday and Tuesday, and even yesterday, one of the things we're picking up is that municipalities are saying they are overstretched because today this department comes, tomorrow that department, and so on, and all of them wants a report. We then said we'll meet with COGTA, we'll coordinate the DDM issues together with COGTA because that's the responsibility of COGTA, but we'll help them to work together so that as they look at compliance, we will also look at their capacity to plan together and also reach out to private sector in those areas and citizens. So that's where we are. We've also established what we call LGMIM, the Local Government Municipal Improvement Model, where we would want all municipalities to improve their capacity from governance side, including the role of MPEC and how municipalities can improve both their human resource and the AG's reports. So those are the supports that you are giving. But Chair, allow me to bring in the DG to take you through systematically. So whatever we are picking up, I think on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we'll be briefing Cabinet on the observations and how departments are doing in as far as service delivery is concerned. So it is the biannual report that will be tabling from frontline military. So allow me, Chair, to allow our DG and his team to present to you. But just for the portfolio committee to note that I'm in transit because I said I'm in Bloemfontein. We had an energy summit. My flight is around 10:10. So I'm going to drive from where I am. If I lose you, I'm en route. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, DM, for those introductory remarks. DG, I now invite you, and you have 45 minutes for the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, Chairperson, members, Minister, DM, Kekani, colleagues. Chair, without much ado, the DM has dealt with the overview of the presentation. I will now request Mr. Henk Serfontein to lead us with the presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson and honorable members, and thanks for this opportunity. So so if whoever's flighting the presentation, can you put it on slide mode, please? And then I'll quickly run through the presentation. So yeah, in the presentation, I think what we would try and cover, honorable members, is some of the background of the DDM process, as well as then just reflect on the structures and functions we've put in place to be able to oversee and monitor the implementation of the DDM process, as well
Apologies,
as
Chair. Apologies, Chair.
Yes, Honorable Manyi.
Sorry, apologies, Chair. Just simply because the DM said she might get cut off and be gone. I just wanted to just spend just 30 seconds just to thank her for the proper, excellent introduction of the department and
No, Honorable Manyi, please don't. I would not allow you to do that. Let's just not disturb the presentation. Mr. Henk, Mr. Serfontein, next time when you come to the presentation, if you're going to need a slideshow, those things get prepared before we start the meeting. The Secretary of Committee is here to assist with that, or any person you bring. Not going to allow when you have to start, you must wait for the slideshow to be prepared. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Chair. So yes, this presentation is then just checking on the background and sort of trying to assess and address what is those reasons why did the president install the DDM process, some of the structures, and then we would give some feedback on what is some of the initiatives that DPME and the public service has put in place to be able to assist and assist with the implementation of these DDM, and then some conclusions and way forward. So thanks for that. Next slide, please. So as you're probably all aware, the president in 2019 has initiated the whole DDM, the district development model. And I think, that should point that we're still in a fairly early stage of implementing this. So you'll probably see in the presentation that we still have some early implementation challenges and the solutions that we're working for with that. So DDM is basically on how do we practicalize in practice implement the intergovernmental relations and all of that. But I need to also mention that DDM goes beyond just the public service and the 3 spheres of government and how we perform, but it includes all spheres of government as well as other stakeholders, including civil society, private sector, and everyone, to be able to implement the development model for all districts going forward. So the president did assign the authority to the Minister of Corporate Governance and Traditional Affairs to then implement and oversee the running of this the DDM. Yeah, so the Minister for Corporate Governance does implement and oversee the implementation of that, and then us as DPME, we do the oversight going forward. And yes, yeah. So DPME, we chair something called the Presidential Steering Committee on the DDM, and that's where we perform our oversight function and that going forward. So next slide, please. Also, maybe to mention as well as that the presidential imbizos, DDM imbizos that are currently underway and has been underway for a while is also managed by the Minister for Corporate Governance. So again, the objectives of the DDM is really about getting integrated planning going, and as I said, it's more than just government plans; it's the whole of society plans at a district level. So, and we also, as part of the DDM process, we've acknowledged that the capacity, capabilities, performance of local government is crucial. It's the building block for the DDM to function, and therefore we will, and you'll see later, we do quite a bit of pay attention to the local government performance and capacity going forward. So again, I think we have to admit that we've, as the public service, have probably worked in silos, and yes, the DDM is trying to remove that silo approach for us going forward, and it's also there to maximize the impacts and align all the plans that we have going forward, because I think what we've seen is that for impacts to realize, there's not a single department, not a single sphere of government that actually contributes towards that impact. That it's a cross-cutting, it's a combined effort and everything that we have to do. And I think also the DDM is definitely trying to narrow the distance between government and the society out there. And I think it's therefore we're saying it's crucial that we have involvement of civil society going forward. Next slide, please. So these are just some of the what we would determine the root causes of that we're trying to address going forward. So again, I think it's just lack of coherence, poor inter-sphere collaboration going forward, and the whole sort of deficiency in our strategic planning session. Again, the issue about not integrated plans that takes in all the stakeholders. Our IGR systems capacity that there was limited sort of that, and then and we never had real joint up plans where all the preconditions, the deliverables from other spheres that were enabling the development happening at a district local level. So I think it's those were the root causes that we aim to address via the DDM. Next slide, please. So we've set up various structures to be able to oversee and provide strategic guidance into the implementation of the whole DDM. So at an executive level, we interministerial committees have, or the Interministerial Committee on Service Delivery and DDM was created, as well as the Presidential Coordinating Council also deals with DDM level at the Premier's level. And then at the national level, we created, as I referred to, the Presidential Steering Committee, and that is then chaired by DPME, and it has membership of the Presidency, Corporate Governance, DALRAD, Agriculture, Land and Reform, Treasury, and SALGA is all part of that. And then Department of Corporate Governance created the DDM Implementation Coordination Committee, and that's where the technical monitoring and oversight sort of happens at a technical level, led by corporate governance. And then I think also one of the principles that we adopted in implementing the DDM was saying that we should not create separate structures, new structures in that, but rather look at existing intergovernmental structures. So therefore the MINMEX, the corporate governance MINMEX, are also utilized to guide and oversee the implementation of the DDM. So yes, at provincial level, they created a provincial DDM technical committees, and the provincial COCTA, the MUNIMEX, again, we would be utilizing those MUNIMEX in that going forward. And then at district, municipal, local government level, again, technical committees, managerial forums, and mayors forums have been created to implement this. I think also just to probably mention now also at provincial level, we are seeing that the provincial departments of corporate governance is taking quite a huge amount of responsibility for the implementation of the DDM, as well as jointly with the Premier's office as we go forward. So next slide, please. Okay, so the role of DDM and the role of the Presidential Steering Committee on the DDM is basically to provide leadership, strategic leadership to institutionalize the DDM. We're also looking at how do we localize the NDP MTSF, National Spatial Development Framework, through the DDM. So, and I think also what at this point, it will be good to mention that we found in the early rounds of the one plans, which is sort of the first deliverable output of the whole DDM process, is that a lot of districts just gave us let's say a copy of paste of districts, of the different plans within the district, and said, okay, there is our one plan. But we're saying the DDM is not even a consolidated or integrated plan. It is a plan for the district, and sort of taking into account the whole situation of the district, taking into account the spatial development frameworks that are in place in that, and then come up with a plan for the district itself. So I think it's probably an area that we still working towards, but I think we've seen some improvements with the revised one plans coming through. And then again, it's also about the oversight, monitoring, evaluation. So we would, the steering committee would perform we'll be monitoring based on the corporate governance, information systems, and implementation progress, the overall implementation going forward. And I think also the one area that was highlighted and saying that through the Presidential Coordinating Committee, we can actually start mobilizing and be at a better position to mobilize the national resources and government resources in a whole towards implementing that. And also part of is to facilitate rapid response going forward. So on that, I think between DPME and Department of Corporate Governance, we've had various interventions throughout sort of the last few years, and yeah. So where interventions was implemented to address some of the failures going forward. So there we have the Section 100, Section 139's legislative capabilities to be able to intervene in that, and various of these interventions have happened going forward. So we have different work streams, and maybe the one is about that I might highlight as well is the support to political champions. So as you know, probably the president have allocated all ministers and and deputy ministers to different to a specific district, and they the champion for the district. So we've seen some good practice, some good examples on how the political champions are supporting the process as well, and I think I can probably raise our deputy minister, as she was saying, she was part of the Fizile Dabe district, and I think it's probably one of the good examples on how to do this going forward. So next slide, please. Okay. Oh, thank you. Yeah, and then so within DPM itself, so one of our responsibilities is to look at national planning and strengthening the planning process going forward. So yes, we have a draft bill or a bill in Parliament at the moment. So we would definitely ask for assistance of getting that bill through and proclamated, and that is a big part of the bill and the new integrated planning framework for us is how do we include the DDM as well as the geospatial referencing of planning. So we've developed guidelines we're busy implementing, and maybe at this point what we've also done is part of the national department's APP's annual performance plans. There's also an annexure there in which they indicate and then report progress on their DDM commitments. So for us to be able to also track in that, and that reporting has started, and we're starting to use that information going forward. So yeah. And we've also sort of issued some guidelines on just how to do localized planning and those things going forward. So yeah, I think we've done quite a bit on that. And then what also has been developed in the last sort of couple of weeks actually was the whole DDM information system, through which we can then start sourcing data and be able to come up with proper good analysis and sort of monitoring the impacts and the progress on that. So also for us, one of the great things that has happened is that we now have the new census data available, and that would then start giving us really good trends and start hopefully seeing some of the trends coming through from within the districts and that going forward. So yes, DPME has been contributing towards those management information systems developed going forward. Next slide, please. Okay, so within DPME, we're also responsible for monitoring the implementation of the MTSF. And within the MTSF, we have priority 1, which is a capable, ethical, developmental orientated public service. And then one of the indicators or areas that we are sort of monitoring is the whole DDM implementation going forward. So what some of the indicators that we're tracking is formalizing the institutional arrangements of the DDM. And I think the structures that we created have sort of points towards how we see the different role and responsibilities going forward. What we've also done is, as a department, we've assessed the quality of the one plans, and that's where I think some of our findings are coming from, that the one plans are not necessarily a plan for the specific district. It's a combination, a cut and paste of all plans, and that we're still seeing some let's call it challenges in having participation from national departments as well as from other stakeholders like business and civil society in our plans going forward. So and then we also would provide support to the district champions. Just to also mention, we as DPME, as part of the Public Service Month, have initiated deployments of Director Generals to those districts where their specific ministers or deputy ministers are champions. So so we also trying, and yes, we support our minister and our deputy minister in those districts where they are champions of. Next slide, please. Okay, so and Minister, Deputy Minister has mentioned the Local Government Management Improvement Model, LGMIM. So that is a system that then focuses on capability, capacity, performance of local government. And yes, we have been rolling out the system for a couple of years now, as well as we started then focusing on the capabilities within the districts, the local government capabilities in the districts, and yes, we've also ran an assessment in Fazile Dabe, and again, this is trying to address that assumption of ours that the local government performance capabilities is crucial in us delivering on the DDM. So what the tool does, it identifies sort of weaknesses, challenges in the area, and then it has it comes up with improvement plans and that to then or actually then fix those challenges. So also what is great for us from that system is that we then also identify good practices and then be able to share the lessons and utilize the good practices to assist those that are experiencing challenges. And yes, we do monitor the improvements that are resulting from the process going forward. So there will be a follow-up assessments to just see whether the improvements did actually realize. And I think then part of the strengthening our performance information and compliance information, and that all between Treasury and Department of Corporate Governance, they issued something called this, what we just call the Circular 88. It's the Local Government Monitoring Framework, and we are now seeing local government starting to report against that framework going forward. So other things that we've also have instituted was something called a DDM barometer, but I must also say that we haven't been able to implement the system yet because the barometer basically just extracts key indicators from the existing information systems, and then gives the Presidential Steering Committee a oversight over the high level oversight of the implementation of the DDM going forward. So, but now that the systems that I mentioned before are starting to be in place, we will start then sort of running those systems. Yes, we also have, as DPME, our frontline service delivery monitoring units, and they are out in the fields on the front line and actually monitor the implementation of DDM. And that I also need to mention that we have done an implementation evaluation of the 3 pilot sites that was done, and again there was quite a bit of learnings and recommendations on going forward in that. And then the DDM National Strategic Hub is the initiative from Department of Corporate Governance in collaboration with SALGA, coming up with this information system. So that's the hub, is where we will start getting all the information as well as the census data and all of that to be able to enhance the analysis and monitoring that we do. Next slide, please. So role of DCOC, as I said, and Deputy Minister has also alluded to this, is that DCOC is driving and ensuring the effective DDM coordination and implementation. So DCOC is the drivers of the DDM going forward. They are also meant to mobilize all sectors from society to also then partake in this, and then they have to report on a regular basis on the DDM implementation status, and that within the different districts and metros. And as I said, DCOC is also responsible for the DDM Imbizo's coordination, and this also includes, as part of the Imbizos, DCOC will actually capture all the commitments made within the Imbizo, and then they monitoring the implementation against those commitments on a regular basis. We as DPME would then get the reports and on the way to the president in giving him the feedback on the implementation of those commitments. Next slide, please. So this is just giving us an overview of the implementation updates and where are we about. So just to mention, we did in 2001, we had the first draft one plans developed, and as I said, then DPME and DCOC jointly sort of did a quality assurance process and going forward, and that's where we highlighted some of the big shortcomings of the plans. And then end of last year, end of 2022, we started coming up with revised one plans, and I think we've been receiving some of those one plans, and then we are starting to see improvement in the quality of the plans going forward. So as I've said, so the structures were put in place, the champions were allocated for those for the districts, and that going forward, and there is the progress reports on the presidential Imbizos that are coming through. So next slide, please. I think that the next couple of slides will just give us the committee a sense on the provincial progress and performance in that. I think probably the big areas of challenges, weaknesses that we are picking up in various of the provinces is the, let's call it the non-participation of firstly national government in the planning process. And I think it's we also have to understand and acknowledge that it's probably more difficult for some of the national departments to participate fully than for others. So if we look at, let's say, a sector like education, you would find, education also has a provincial footprint, and therefore they can hopefully, so in a province, you probably have maybe 5, 6 different districts. So yes, the provincial education department can participate in 5 forums. But then we're sitting with, let's say, Department of Water and Sanitation at a national level. They've got no provincial footprint. So what has to happen is that the national department water has to now partake in 44 different district planning sessions and plans and all of those things. And so I think practically we are seeing those challenges coming through. And I think we're sort of working on seeing how can we facilitate the participation, contribution of national into the district plans going forward. And then I think the other cross-cutting finding that we have is the participation of let's call it stakeholders outside of government. So that's civil society, business, and all of that. And I think we're also saying that we have to start leveraging some of the capacity within civil society as well as business to be able to initiate these developments going forward. So and I think also part of civil society engagement is around understanding the needs of that specific society environment that we're in, and that we can deliver what people really need and not what we think they need. So I think those are the big sort of generic findings that we have from these provincial ones. So next slide, please. Okay, so I think this is our last slide, and it's just trying to sort of say what is the next steps, critical next steps for us going forward, and that. So I think we have to acknowledge and say that yes, while we've set up some coordination structures and monitoring structures, that I think we can still improve in our different roles, coordination between DPME and DCOC going forward, and that. Again, also being a new program, we're saying we can still definitely improve our intergovernmental relations and institutionalization of the DDM. And we've also seen different models of implementing of the DDM. So we have, for example, KZN province, they started a project in Kumasaki quite a few years ago. So they've already started sort of this geospatial sort of planning process, all of that going forward. So what they have done is just utilize their structures and existing structures going forward. So I think what we're saying is we identifying those good practices, starting to learn from how there's different models of implementing the DDM, and yes, we would start disseminating those learnings and see how we can go forward. So yes, we also would now want to start seeing our early warning systems, our rapid response mechanisms, and those things starting to take off and start working. And just to also on the response mechanisms to also indicate that DCOC is also working on the intervention bill, in which we would also then try and strengthen the impact and the outcomes of our interventions, because unfortunately we have picked up that there's various districts or municipalities, at least, that there's been various interventions into those municipalities, but the situation seems to not be changing. So yes, we would are trying to strengthen our approaches into interventions and that going forward. Again, I think it's the monitoring leads with the early warning systems going forward. And then, yes, I think we also can leverage much more on the political authorities, the political champions, using their powers of proximity and all of those to be able to further improve the rollout of that. So yes, I think we would continue to support the principals or the champions in implementing this. So yeah, I think, as I also then mentioned, the strategic hub, it's being implemented, and we would strengthen that system to enhance the information that's carried on the system, and also therefore the analysis going forward. So I thank you, Honourable Chair and members. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Serfontein. Any last comment? DG, welcome, Minister, to our meeting. I'm sure you would want to say something, perhaps after listening to everybody. DG, any last word?
Chair, I'm fairly covered, except to emphasize that we move from a view that it's very important to have well-functioning institutions. So lessons learned from previous interventions is that if we don't build strong institutional mechanisms, we will then not be able to get the results. So that is the emphasis of what DPME has been doing. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, DG. Honorable members, you have listened to the presentation, you would have read it. You might have your own thoughts, questions, clarities, or comments about it. I now want to recognize you if you have any inputs that you want to make on this presentation. Honorable Yabo. Honorable Manyi. Honorable Pillay. In that order.
Actually, Honorable Pillay raised before me.
You want to chair the meeting, Honorable Manyi? Please don't do that. Then Honorable Zungula after Pillay. Go ahead, Honorable Yabo.
Greetings, Chair. Let me also extend my greetings to the Deputy Minister. I'm taking from your remarks earlier that the Minister is also on the platform. Let me also extend greetings to her. Greetings to all honorable members on the platform, the DG, the department, his team. Thank you for the presentation that you have brought to us. It is quite enlightening on the work that is being done on the district development model as proclaimed by the President in 2019. One of the weaknesses of local government is that local government has a tendency of failing to spend. And that's the first thing. The second thing is that even with that inability to spend on budgets that would have been allocated, we should also take note of the fact that many municipalities struggle with revenue raising within their borders or their jurisdiction. And this is why the division of revenue and equitable share is an important discussion to have in relation to that aspect of empowering municipalities with enough resources to meet the needs at the coalface, because we are all in agreement that municipalities are the coalface of service delivery for our people. And this is where the majority or the bulk of resources should be channeled. And maybe there should be an intention to look at the principles behind the division of revenue, as well as equitable share within that sphere of government. Having said that, the problem that is very perennial remains that of the inability to spend by many municipalities. What would be the role of the DDM structure or model with regards to assisting the increase of capabilities and capacity of municipalities to spend? And I think there's also a need to look at the rules that govern spending, because the timelines of delivery at local government level are also impeded by the very legislation that is intended to keep the local government in check in respect of making sure that they do not abuse public funds or utilize them in a manner that they cannot account for them. We agree that there should be checks and balances, but the legislative framework is an Achilles heel, especially because those who are at local government level seem to be unable to crack the code of putting together a report, sending through the reports through various structures. And I'm saying, what is the role of the DDM and its structures to ensure that municipalities have the capability and the capacity to implement quickly, efficiently, within budget, and also be able to report to the Auditor General of South Africa and receive shining audits at the end of the financial year? How is that going to be incorporated in the structure of the DDM and its implementation moving forward, especially within the context of the one plans that are part of the whole ecosystem of the DDM? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Yabo. Honorable Manyi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Firstly, DM, as I was saying, that I want to welcome your excellent introduction of the department. I think you've sketched its role and purpose properly. Really appreciate that. But DM, you just need to know as well that in the annual report, all that sketching is not properly reflected. So I think going forward, all what you've said in terms of the role of the department must be captured in the activities that are reflected in the annual report. We mustn't have appendages. For instance, this DDM thing, I didn't see it in that annual report as by way of example, yet there's been resources by the department to deal with it. So I think annual report should encompass the entire work of the department and not have some scattered approach. So that's just to say that I think I'm happy with your understanding and your capturing of the role and purpose of the department. In terms of the presentation that's been made here, Chairperson, I'm going to do it in two parts. One, I'm going to just make some quick comments on the presentation, and then I've got 3 questions that are just pointed at the end. Firstly, I think I've just recently joined Parliament. I don't know whether this presentation was done before or it's the first time this presentation is done almost 4 years later. And I'm actually somewhat confused and disappointed on a whole range of things. It's almost like a mangle moose thing here. It's almost like, I don't know, at the 1 minute you have a DDM information system that has just been developed a couple of weeks ago, as Mr. Sterfontein was saying. And the next minute, you've got local government management information, that you are using to do this information. I'm saying to myself, but what has been happening in the past 4 years? If only a couple of weeks ago, we are still talking about the DDM information system. How have you been operating all this time? If you're only talking about this thing only 2 weeks ago, you know. So I'm in fact, I think the presentation itself just indicates haphazardness of the department, because at the 1 minute we are almost like on teething phases in terms of the presentation. Yeah, almost on the teething phases of doing what needs to be done, and the next minute we are at the center of executing. And I actually even get confused as well in the process to say who actually is playing the monitoring role here when the department itself seems to be boots and all in this thing. Then it means we must get somebody else to monitor the monitoring department. You know, that's the impression I'm getting here. I'm not getting the impression that the department in its execution is doing the audit type of approach, where you look at what others are doing and you evaluate and you give reports about what needs to happen to improve and all of that. I'm getting the sense that you are resourcing yourselves to get on yourselves and do the job yourselves. I hear that the deputy minister is busy going into all kinds of other outreach areas and all of that. You know, sitting where I'm sitting, I mean, and this thing just wakes up now, as it were. Maybe you can correct me that it was presented before, but for me, it's just suspicious. It just looks like some quick thinking to say, what do we do? The elections are here. How do we make sure that we're on the ground very quickly, just to convince the electorate? You know, it really just sounds like a disguised campaigning by one party. I don't know. I'm not struck with any confidence having listened to this presentation. Not at all. I really am not. Having made those comments, I have 3 questions. One, and each of these questions, through you, Chair, they are sort of in 2 parts, but I've got 3 questions. The first one is, how does the DDM align with broader national developmental goals, the NDP, and strategies? And how is DPME ensuring effective coordination and integration of efforts at district level? For instance, I didn't hear anything about government clusters, and I know government has got clusters. I don't know whether clusters are used or not used, or what is happening. The word government cluster didn't happen. I would have thought that if you are going to talk about some integration model of sorts, that you would have something that talks to how these clusters, which are already in place, how they should work together. But I didn't hear anything about this. Almost like it's a reinvention of things. You also said KZN is doing its own thing. Honestly, it just sounds so haphazard. Second question, what measures are being taken to ensure that local communities are actively involved and consulted in the development, planning, and implementation processes under the DDM? And how is DPME monitoring community participation and feedback? The sense I get is almost like when there's nothing else to do, somebody just decides, okay, today, let's hit Soweto. And then you get up there and you surprise the people of Soweto. I'm not getting the sense that there is any interaction, there is any talking to the people and all of that. And if that is so, can you please give details of how that happens and where can we go and check this out as a way of example? If you give me an area, trust me, I'll be there tomorrow to verify this. Can you just tell me where is this happening as an example where we can go and ask communities themselves whether they've been consulted on this, or it's just some top-down government activity. I'm not getting the sense through you, Chair, that there is that participation by communities and all that. Third question, can you provide insights into the key performance indicators and data metrics used to assess the success and impact of the DDM model? And how is DPME utilizing this data to make informed decisions and adjustments in the implementation of the model? This thing was launched in 2019. It's now 2023, almost 4 years later. Surely by now, I should be able to respond to this, although I'm not very hopeful because I just get a lot of things that are still happening. It's going to happen. We're still learning and all of this. This is like 4 years later. What's been happening all this time? Yeah. So, Chair, I must say I'm not inspired by this presentation at all. And so those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Manyi, for your contribution. Honorable Pillay.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and greetings to all members on the platform. Chair, I'm going to go straight to my questions. The first one, I think both honorable members may have mentioned, but to be specific, who is responsible for monitoring the establishment or the implementation of the DDM? And I ask this question because I just want clarity on whether it is the steering committee or it's going to be DPME. And I'm also asking this because there are some municipalities, if not provinces, that are non-compliant. And I think it's important for whoever is providing that role to then be able to enforce the necessary. And then what is the time frame to have all provinces, including districts and municipalities, to be fully compliant with the one plan and actually ready for implementation? Because it's one thing to plan, to be able to get the one plan on paper, but then it means having to then implement the plans that you have developed and the plans that you've worked on. And I think ultimately we are able to gauge success of the DDM based on the actual implementation of the plans. And I think we all know that we often have plans and then we have the lack of implementation thereof that creates a challenge. Does the DDM have a strong focus on disaster management? And I'm asking this because we have to take cognizance of the fact that more recent, if not, we have a serious challenge around disasters, natural disasters. And I think it's important that we plan ahead to be able to address that. How does the DDM speak to municipalities, and Honorable Yabo has mentioned this, to municipalities that underspend or return grants? Because that's a serious challenge when one looks at how we should be providing services and implementing. So how does the DDM speak to that? And what is the consequence management on that part? In respect of the census versus planning, has the steering committee looked at the recent census results, and have they started aligning the plans accordingly? Or if not, what is the time frame in being able to do that? Because we may have created a plan before the census results were released, and it may not speak directly to the current situation that the country is in terms of what would have come out as the results of the census. And then what has the DDM identified as the common or key priorities in districts? I think it's important because you might find that they overlap from one to the other. How is the department ensuring a coherent implementation of the DDM, recognizing that the city of Cape Town does not have a DDM plan, that integrates intergovernmental planning? And then what monitoring and evaluation mechanisms are in place to ensure matters raised in the presidential MBIZO are addressed promptly? How is the department working with traditional leaders to ensure that they play a significant role in the DDM? And my last two questions is, what must be expedited? A recommendation is that we must expedite the finalization of legislation to ensure that the DDM approach has a legal framework. And lastly, I think we need a roadmap and set specific deadlines and timeframes for DDM, not just the plans, but also implementation. And we as a PC needs to zoom in and provide oversight on this DDM. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Pillay, for your contribution. Honorable Zungula.
Thank you, Chair. Greetings to the department and the honorable members. Since the DDM is an initiative from 2019, so I want to find out, Chair, if has there been any fruits from the side of the DG, because in our view, or in my view, there's been an increase in the lack of service delivery. Municipalities are still using consultants at a very, very high rate. There's a lot of dysfunctional municipalities. So I want to find out from 2019, has there been any tangible results from the DDM? Now, from a conceptual point of view, is the DDM effectively stating that municipalities have poor governance systems and structures, hence there is a need for this model of the DDM? Now, if that is the case, why is there no focus on building capacity on existing structures instead of deploying of a presidential steering committee, as that will not be sustainable? And also, what does this mean for the provincial government? Because provincial government, if you look at some of the functions, or if you look at some of the objectives of the DDM to improve delivery, it speaks to items or issues that ordinarily you should be capacitated, that should be driven by, at the very least, in fact, it should be driven by the municipalities themselves, failing which the provincial government does intervene. That was the second one. Then the other question is, what has then been the impact of political instability on the DDM? And the last one, Chair, how has the DDM been received and performed in the Western Cape? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Zongola, for your contribution. Is there any other member who wishes to make a contribution before we ask the department to respond? None. Thank you. DG and your team, you would have noted those critical contributions and questions from the members, and I hope you have taken notes to respond to each of those that have been raised. Over to you.
Okay. Thanks, Chairperson. Thanks, honorable members. I will start and pick up on a number of questions and allow the presenter and the DDGs to deal with some of the specific issues. Now, starting with Honorable Yabo's question on the failure of local government to spend. Chair, this has been a very big challenge. We have followed up on this issue, and it was one of the reasons why Infrastructure South Africa was established, to assist particular municipalities in project preparations. Because we found that most of the time, the municipalities rely on service providers from outside to help them prepare for projects. And that was also posing a lot of challenges in terms of possible capture of local government. So there is work that is being done, led by Infrastructure South Africa, which is housed at the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure. We have been following on the work of ISA, and lately we've been engaged with them on the 30-year review. But Chair, if necessary, we'll be happy to come back with ISA to go into details on the specific interventions that have been made to assist local government to prepare adequately for projects and also to spend. So that is the first issue and a commitment. Then on revenue raising challenges, we have done some work on this, and we are concerned about the state of things because we have seen the decline in revenue collection for a number of municipalities. And in part, this has been linked to the challenge that we are experiencing in the energy sector. So as we have load shedding, as people move to the microgrids, we are experiencing a situation whereby many municipalities are losing revenues. So what we have done as DPME, we visited Salga. We spent time at Salga to engage on this matter. And there are ideas that have come up, that may include, for instance, changing the funding formula so that municipalities that are struggling with revenues can be supported. But this has not gone to cabinet yet. It's a matter that has come up, and ourselves working with Salga and DCOG are going to make specific recommendations on how to deal with the fact that many municipalities are now struggling to collect revenues. So we are focusing on that. Also, in terms of the gridlocks that are induced by legislation, we are able to note that there is still a plan to amend the Public Finance Management Act, and the Municipal Finance Management Act will be following on these processes because they are very important in a way that they will also loosen some of the gridlocks that have arisen because of the way legislation is framed. So that also is being discussed within a government. And then one of the things that we're going to do, and this is very important, there are two ways to institutionalize the DDM. One is through a legislative process that is led by the Department of Cooperative Governance, so that you provide a clear legislative framework on what the DDM is and what it's not, and how it's going to function, including setting out responsibilities and consequence management. So that part, is ongoing, led by cooperative governance. On our side, as we reported previously, we have started to think about the DDM going into the next administration, the 7th administration. And what we'll have to recommend to the administration is the integration of the DDM as an inherent component of the medium-term strategic framework. So that is what we have started to do at the DPME. And once you do that, once the DDM is fully inserted within the medium-term strategic framework, it will then become binding for all departments, for all entities affected to implement the DDM. So, Chair, we are clear in terms of the instruments that will ensure that the implementation of DDM is no longer optional, but is something that is a must that must be done by everyone. So that work is ongoing. Now, quickly on the questions raised by Honorable Mani as to what happened in the last 4 years. Chair, in 2020 and 2021, we were starting to implement the DDM. And unfortunately, we had to do that within the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. So to a large extent, if you look at how government was responding to the pandemic, it was by and large guided by the whole idea, the whole philosophy and approach of the district development model. It helped us a lot as we were doing a testing, moving from one district to another. And that helped the Department of Health to be more specific in terms of the situation in the different districts. So one can safely say that although it was not robust for very obvious reasons, we had started to implement the DDM, albeit in an environment that was difficult for all of us. And we can go back and show how government functioned within the context of the DDM during that period. Now, in terms of the systems that we have instituted, partly learning from the COVID experience, we had to introduce new systems, because once you learn from one situation and move to another, you have to improve on your systems. Now, there is no confusion on the systems. The systems that DPOC is introducing are for the purposes of coordinating implementation. As the presentation indicated, that they are responsible for coordinating the implementation of the DDM. Now, you would expect, Chair, that in some cases, there will be a thin line between a system that you use for implementation and the system that you use for monitoring. So we don't duplicate. So where the cooperative governance has introduced systems that will also allow us a line of sight to access data, we don't duplicate those systems. But where we need to have our own system for monitoring, we have to do so as a DPME and say to corporate governance that in addition to our own systems, we are also introducing our own systems for the sake of monitoring and evaluation. So that is the differentiation between the two systems that are introduced by the two departments. So we have bilaterals, we know that's why we can come here, Chair, and represent the systems that cooperative governance has introduced, because we know about them. And then they are also aware of the toolkits that we have introduced as DPME for the purposes of monitoring. So there is that coordination between the two departments. Now, the logic is that DPME is a department that monitors the monitors. So in the case of Treasury, DPSA and cooperative governance, departments that you can call center of government departments, are also carrying some monitoring functions. But where they do so and monitor certain services or interventions, DPME's role becomes that of monitoring the monitors, and we can go into details on the relationships that were forged with these departments where they do monitoring. Now, how does the DDM link with the MTSF? I've already dealt with this point that DDM has to be integrated into the MTSF. And that work has started. We had done some preliminary work when we revised the MTSF in 2021 to take into consideration the COVID environment. But as I said earlier on, it was not as robust as it should have been. And this is a matter that we're carrying forward into the new MTSF that will start with the new administration. On the role of the clusters, now what we've done, the clusters are currently at the national level. There are clusters at the provincial level. And what we have done, we have invited the provinces to start serving in the clusters, in the national clusters, so that we can deal with the disjuncture between national and the provinces. And this is particularly important when it comes to interventions in local government, so that you don't have disjointed approaches between the provinces and national. So the clusters are still in place, intact. They discuss on a regular basis issues pertaining to local government where necessary, particularly in what we call the governance cluster. We have all the DGs of the provinces participating, and SALGA has also been invited as part of the national clusters. So I think the question is pointed and necessary, because it shows that the DDM is not just at another level. whilst other things are going to a separate direction. So there is that integration that is taking place through the clusters. On the role of the community and the examples of where that has happened, I think when DM started, she dealt with this issue of our experience in Facility Derby. We had also, as this department, done a lot of work in Herikwala, where Minister Gungubela was deployed while he was still minister in our space. So, Chair, without going far, I can simply say that we can make use of our own direct experience as we have been supporting our political principles to deal with the DDM issues. Honorable PD have dealt with the differentiation between the role of the cooperative governance and ourselves as a DPME. They coordinate implementation. We do monitoring and evaluation and planning. Of course, working together with them and other entities. Now, on the compliance of provinces and other entities with the DDM, we stated in the presentation that there is a legal framework that is being produced by the Department of Cooperative Governance. And also I indicated that there is work that we are doing as a DPME to integrate the DDM into the medium-term strategic framework that is ongoing. Then with respect to disaster management, yes, two things are being done there. We have asked departments to include disaster management in their annual performance plans as a part of introducing the risk element in the way government departments are functioning or plan for delivery. But at the same time, we have finalized the National Spatial Development Framework that we referred to previously, and then integrated the Spatial Development Framework with the DDM. Now, the first thing that we've done in that integration was to say that each and every project that government departments are implementing should be geo-referenced. So we should know what is happening where, who's doing what, where. Initially, there was a huge compliance with the geo-referencing guidelines that we issued by departments in the infrastructure area. And there was limited geo-referencing by other departments. And we are attending to that to show that not only infrastructure projects, but all interventions by government departments should be adequately geo-referenced so that we can know what is happening. I dealt with the issue of underspending broadly. The metros have their own mechanisms. And as we said in the presentation, there is poor participation of the metros, and that will be cured by the instruments that I have referred to. One, the revision of the medium-term strategic framework that will include the DDM. And for the first time, when we develop the new medium-term strategic framework, we will engage the metros, we will involve them so that it's not an imposition. So, Chair, up to now, the medium-term strategic framework was largely developed by the national sphere in collaboration with the provinces. Now we are stretching this beyond the two spheres to involve local government so that there can be buy-in from local government. Now we'll do that mindful of the constitutional separation of the different spheres of government, which has been one of the gridlock that makes coordination sometimes a challenge. On the role of traditional leadership, Chair, we believe that that is very central. And speaking to DPME, we have had regular meetings with the House of Traditional Leadership on various matters of common interest. So even before we go to Cabinet to report on some of the things that we see happening, we do consult with the National House of Traditional Leader through Ubabus Tole, who's managing the house in nationally. So we do consult with them. 2 days ago, we had a long consultation again with the National House of Traditional Leadership. And this time we're talking about the 30 years of democracy review and the role of traditional leadership in that. And together with the Department of Traditional Affairs, they have given us quite a lot of information and their own observations of what has been happening in the last 30 years. And all these issues or recommendations that are coming up will find expression in the work that we are going to do in the MTSF. Now, lastly, Honorable Zungula, on the fruits of the DDM since 2019, I've already highlighted, Chair, albeit we may need to provide further details to back this one up, that to a significant extent, our approach to the COVID pandemic was already being influenced by this direction to embrace the DDM. So in a number of areas, we made use of the whole logic of the DDM to deal with the pandemic. And as I said earlier on, this, in our view, was a great success, that we all realized the need to work together in a particular way. We have explained what necessitates the DDM, and that is around coordination. So the nature of the constitutional dispensation creates some kind of differentiation. And if we don't coordinate amongst the three spheres, then it will be difficult for government to function. And it may be a unique South African phenomenon, or maybe other countries also experience similar challenges. But the long and short of it is that government can only be effective and efficient if the three spheres work together. Now, it is not either or whether we need the DDM or versus fixing the institutions that are facing challenges. We move from a view that the two are interrelated and cannot be separated. So while fixing the institutions, as we said in the presentation, that is a starting point, we've been paying attention to the situation in local government. But doing so cannot negate the need for the different spheres to work together. So our view is that it's not either or, but it's something that is need to be coordinated. Now, lastly, on the impact, and I think maybe I'll just give a high-level view from an administrator, but the political principles can deal with the issue of the impact of political stability. Lastly, in terms of the Western Cape, we have been working with the Western Cape. I should indicate that the Western Cape at present uses our instruments, participate in the MTSF processes. They submit their APPs in accordance, in line with the MTSF, and also their performance in line with the MTSF. So there is a collaboration and compliance by the Western Cape province when it comes to the work that the department does. And one believes that as we move to integrate the DDM with the MTSF, that will also increase the participation of the province, because that will now be integral in the planning of government. So, Chair, I've skipped political related questions for obvious reasons, and I will check with colleagues if there are specific issues that I did not cover. The DDG concern and others, and the presenter, just on the issues that I've not dealt with, so that we can also save on time. Thank you, Chairperson. Maybe starting with the DDG, Gugu Timani. I know she's not well, but if she's able to speak, Chair, with your permission, I'll ask her to deal with one or two issues related to the legal framework. Over to you, DDG.
Yeah, thanks, DG. Good morning to all the members and colleagues. Yes, I'm well, but I'm not well, but I had to join. I think for me, it will be more of an emphasis on what DG has highlighted. There's a question that has been asked by member MP Mani on the issues of DTM vis-a-vis National Development Plan. If you look at the slide, there's a slide 8 of the presentation where it says there had to be some revision of APPs and strategic plans so that the DTM is incorporated. So in a nutshell, the DTM is not a standalone, but it's part of the government planning system. I thought, let me just respond on that one. And then the other issue that MP Mani raised in terms of why there's this item now, as if nothing has been done. There's been other imperative like your local government, MIM, your Circular 88. I remember when I was still in government, local government would be expected to respond in terms of governance issues on Circular 88 and also respond on what is happening on issues of development. And then there's a DTM barometer where I think it's also linked to one of the MPs who have raised to say how to monitor. The barometer basically it's outlined the local government that are working in terms of the green, then those that are on amber and those that are on red. And there are intervention plans to make sure that those local government that are not performing optimally, they are assisted. But on the National Strategic Hub, it's something that just came now, but it doesn't mean that there's never been any system, because there are other imperatives like your LGMIM, your Circular 88 and DTM barometer. In a nutshell, the National Strategic Hub, it's about your infrastructure digitization of government to make sure that the information is there, it's recorded, it's archived. Lately, there had to be incorporation of DTM as part of a national strategic hub. Hence, it sounds as if nothing has been happening. There's been some work, but lately we had to make sure that the DTM is part of the national strategic hub to make sure that there's a security of information in government and there's a digitization of information. The other issue that has been raised in terms of the community, the involvement of the community. DTM by its nature, it's aligned with the ITPs in local government. And you can't conduct an ITP without having key stakeholders like your community, your NGO, your business, and other key actors in government. So there's that alignment with the ITPs of municipalities. I think one issue that UTC has touched, Fezile Tabi, is just part one. Maybe if the MP is interested, we can come and present and outline every work that has been done, so that he understands that even community it's part of the DTM. And then the other issue that has been raised is the issue of imbizos. Yes, the imbizos of the president, the posture there, it's about the DTM approach. But what has happened lately, if you can notice, just I think last week or so, the president to go back to Northwest. There was a first imbizo that was held in Northwest. Then there was a second imbizo. The second imbizo, it was about reporting to the community or assess the progress to say, on the previous imbizo, these are the issues that have been raised by this community. On the second imbizo, the government was accounting. So there's that relationship in terms of monitoring how the government is performing on the imbizo, because they are called district DTM imbizos of the president. And then the other issue that has been raised is the issues of, I know that UTC has touched on it, on the issues of the disaster management. Yes, because we know that we had to make sure that we learn from the disaster that has happened. So there's been an integration of disaster management in the APPs of government. So that integration is very important. But also, let me say, there's also a multi-sectoral team, because we are working very closely with the National Disaster Management Center, DPME, because there's a role that they are playing in terms of doing an oversight, and also we have to monitor. So what we have done, we have formed an integrated approach. We call it a multi-sector team, where we go for KZN. We've been to KZN, and I know that there was even a question from Parliament. I think we've elaborated further on that one. On that multi-sectoral, you get DPME, you get COGTA, you get your SALCA, transport, and all that. When we are on the ground, because the skill set are different. The transport, they will look at the transport side in terms of the bridge, whether the streams will be clean and how the bridge are built and all that. So what I'm trying to say, the DTM also, it's linked to the disaster management. Yeah, I think I've tried to cover some of the issues, but yes, I think DG, in terms of the framework, there's a slide that speaks about the institutionalization of the DTM, because there has been a question to say, yes, DTM, it has been adopted, but do we have any legal framework? Hence, there's an amendment of the IGR Framework Act to say, let's incorporate the DDM. And I know that is going to address some of the issues where somebody will say, Western Cape, why they are not implementing the DDM, they're implementing something else, and we are one government. So that framework is going to address, to say, as government, we are expected to comply on this legal framework of DDM. I think those are the issues I thought DG, let me respond. I'm not sure whether Uheng wants to say something.
Thank you,
Okay.
DG. Thank you, honorable members. Just a couple of quick things. Maybe honorable member Manye, I think maybe I was not clear. When I talked about KZN and how they're implementing the DDM model, I think they actually doing, I think, quite a good job. Their plans are they producing the plans, and then but all I was saying is they actually are just using a different implementation model. So because they've started a previous similar sort of project approach. So I think, and I think we're not saying that there's only one way to implement the DDM. There's principles and stuff that you need to adhere to. But and I think it also links to Honorable Member Zungula, who said that we shouldn't create new or bold separate structures. And I think we've said all the way from the start is that we don't want to create new structures, new processes and stuff for the DDM. So yes, I think we definitely very conscious about utilizing existing processes, systems, structures and stuff in place to be able to come up with to implement the DDM and be wary of the burdens, the administrative burdens we place on all these entities. I think also Honorable Member Pillay was asking about the time frame on when do we implement the plans. And I think what we already starting to see, and it's probably linked to some of the results as well. So what we're starting to see is, yes, the district comes up with the district plan. And that plan then is implemented via the existing structures and stuff. So obviously the DDM doesn't have a budget. There's no budgets associated with the DDM. But what we are finding is that we would have plans and let's say specifically your catalytic projects. So your catalytic projects are identified in the DDM. And then they are sort of entrenched into the plans of, let's say, local government or provincial or national government, depending on where the implementation lies. And then even from the first round of assessments, we started seeing that some of those catalytic projects identifying through the DDM is then being captured in the plans, and then, yes, already started to be implemented. Just example, I think we saw at Harigwala, there was originally each municipality wanted to establish an abattoir, but then through the district planning process, it was sort of concluded that, it's better to have one big processing facility for the whole of the district, and therefore, those plans were changed in the municipalities to start reflecting on that. So, and then I think the last one is then on the census information. We haven't had time to analyze the census information, but I think we will definitely go forward, because again, the census would give us an updated situational analysis to say what is the current situation in those. But just to mention, yes, we've been using the 2011 census, but we've also used the updates that Stats South Africa provides through the household surveys and those type of things, where we have been updating the the district profiles for us to go forward in that. And I think the last one is what is the impact? Member also asked the question about what is the impact indicators that we are tracking. So again, for us, it's really about the triple challenges. How do we measuring sort of employment, measuring poverty, district GDPs, and then also the inequality ratios and stuff. So for us, that is the impact that we believe the DDM drives, and that's the ones that we would be monitoring in the process. Thank you, honorable members.
Chair, that concludes our responses. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, DG. Honorable members, any follow-ups, quick follow-ups on your side, having listened to the responses? If there are any, if none, I will then proceed. Or Honorable Manyi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Firstly, let me welcome the responses. I think they've gone a long way towards answering my questions, in particular, the contribution by Ms. Gutimane. I think that's a level of detail I was actually looking for. Yeah, thank you very much for that input. Just quick follow-up on the last point that has been mentioned by Mr. Serfontein, talking about the key performance indicators, which I was going to have as a follow-up question. And then she mentions things like measuring the impact of things like inequality. As we sit here and now, the inequality that we have is worse than before apartheid. This is on objective figures. Does it mean now that, therefore, that something is not happening? Because this is something that we can't argue. We've got more equality today than we've had in apartheid days. So is that indicator then clearly telling us that all this busy has got no positive outcome? So that's the one question. Secondly, Chairperson, I'm struggling just with one thing only now, the issue of separation of roles. I am not getting the sense that this department is doing. I hear the things about systems, but I'm getting the sense that as much as the department is busy with all kinds of systems, which is a good thing, but I'm not getting the sense that the department is working through others, as it was almost like they are doing things themselves and all of that. I mean, when you talk about consultation, I'm not getting the sense or something that says, well, a particular department went to consult and this is what they got out. It's almost like they do it themselves. Can I just get clarity on that? When you consult communities, who is consulting? Is it you as DPME, or you work with the other departments that are doing the consultation? So I'm just saying, Chair, I'm struggling to get the role separation. I'm just getting the sense that the department is busy itself on these matters. I'm not getting the sense that the department is playing the overseer, is monitoring as it should. So that's those are the two issues. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Manyi. DJ, quick one.
Thanks, Chair. The departments do consultations with communities. What we said here is that we have also done our own in relation to Eric Wala and Faisal, where our ministers have been deployed as champions. So we do that. But I should add that we don't always want to rely on what departments do. Sometimes we have to go and verify what departments do so that we can come up with informed positions. So by and large, we're referring to the work that we do relative to where our ministers are deployed. And if that came across the way it did, our apology. Then I think on the issue of inequality, we are dealing with this issue. obviously the debate is, the question triggers quite a lot of, issues, a very big debate, around inequality in South Africa overall. But what DPME has been doing now, one, we are working on this issue in the 30-year review that we are undertaking so that we can give you our own assessment of how things have fared over a long period of time. So we'll do that. And I think the point around inequality or rising inequalities will also be dealt with in that exercise, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, DG. Honorable Minister, if I may invite you to make your comments.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning to all the members of this portfolio committee. And let me first apologize, of course, for arriving late. I had a problem and big challenges with my network, and I'm not sure. Maybe I should ask for a permission to switch off my camera because it will definitely create more glitches as it relates.
Please go ahead. You can switch it off.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. And let me, of course, greet you and greet the DG, greet the Deputy Minister and the colleagues from DPME. And also thank you, of course, for this opportunity that you have given us to just come and give you an update on the work that we've been doing with the DDM. I think the colleagues have, of course, given detailed responses as it relates to the engagement that the members of the portfolio committee had as it relates to our presentation that we brought here. In my view, as it relates to the DDM, and I am saying this precisely because there have been a number of talks and discussions in the cabinet, and I think one of the members did ask about the issues of your DORA equitable shares, and because that then now speak to how the spheres of government are actually operating, and if where service delivery actually takes place is rightfully resource based on the skills that they should have, and of course the monetary resourcing that they would need. We have taken a decision in the last cabinet, which was on Wednesday, that we need to have a review with National Treasury as it relates to your equitable share and DORA. And this is going to assist us at least to be able to say, what do we do with municipalities that are unable to raise revenue, for example, and also attract skill? Because some of the things that we would find that most of the municipalities, the question has been asked, are unable to can spend in terms of the grant fundings that they are having, is precisely because they do not have a skill that are or skills that are necessary for them to be able to meet their delegated responsibilities given as it relates to the grant funding that they would be having. So we have spoken about the issue of reviewing the grant funding itself, as well as reviewing the funding model in totality. Now, I am believing that this would then now be able to assist us to further look at what is actually happening as it relates to DDMs. The DDMs, of course, were made, and we all know that, or were established and developed to be able to assist us to at least take everything strategically and in a more coordinated way in terms of service delivery in a specific place. Now, the DDMs, of course, are not an event or destination, but it's actually a process, in my view, of service delivery that would then now speak to the plan, speak to implementation, but that where we come, of course, is the issue of supporting the coordination by COCTA and making sure that we do our monitoring and evaluation of if things are happening the way they are supposed to. As it relates to the issues of public participation, which is quite important. Indeed, we don't necessarily go and ask directly about issues of health on our own and have our own public, as the DG has said, public participation. But when we do our frontline monitoring, we will have to not only take, for example, what the department would have given us, but we would go on site ourselves and engage with particular community members as it relates to whatever it is that we would have been going there to actually do. And we've been doing that quite robustly as it relates to the issues of disaster management and the intervention of service delivery that has been done by different departments, coordinated by COCTA, of course. And our DM has been really doing well as well, because that's one of the delegation that we have given her as it relates to this, making sure that when we do our frontline monitoring, we would go ourselves, but we'd also take other departments to go with ourselves, so that as we then now get the information that we need, we would then now be able to say to those departments that we are supposed to be coordinating as it relates to the monitoring part of issues, are at least there to be able to answer. So we work together with departments. We never go out to do things on our own. Now, this issue of the National Strategic Hub, which is a beautiful system. It's a dashboard. It doesn't only deal with issues of monitoring, but that's where centralized data of government as it relates to service delivery of the entire 3 spheres of government is actually put in different portfolios as based on DDMs. So if you would want to know about what the Department of Education is doing in Sianda district or yes, let me say Sianda district or whatever district that you'd be having, DDM that you'd be having, you are able to just go there and you'd get a dashboard, then you would be able to get that information. And that would then now assist us to coordinate better, but also it gives us early warning systems to know if municipalities or another department is actually not doing what they are supposed to do, and how do we intervene better. And it also assists us to then now be able to speak to each other as it relates to integrated way of making sure that service delivery is done. So this system is actually going to bring to life better in a coordinated way what has already been done as it relates to integrated planning and implementation that colleagues have spoken about. But in this way, at least anyone who has got authority to be able to access that particular dashboard would be able to get information. So it will help us with planning, not only ourselves nationally, but it will also be able to help municipalities to also plan better, meaning that we would then now be able to also in some way, somehow, share some of the expertise that we would be having, just the same way that, for example, the Department of Water and sanitation is actually doing. They're doing quite a wonderful job, as much as they don't have departments as it relates to provinces and districts. However, in all the imbizos that we have gone to, you'd always find a flagship some of flagship programs that would be there being done by them as it relates to the services of water in different localities. As the colleagues have spoken, of course, the issues of imbizos have been going on, and they are part of the ways that we're able to consult, but also speak to our people on the ground. And that has worked quite well. As I've already spoken to the issue of what do you call the issue of the frontline monitoring also give us that particular opportunity. But we also have another process that I think is quite important that we have and do with the UN as well, because they have something that is called the VNRs, which is like your voluntary national reviews of what is happening as it relates to government a way of making sure that we do comply with the SDGs. That would then now take us complying with Agenda 2063 and eventually, of course, the NDP 2030, the vision itself. As it relates to disaster management, and I'm just closing now because the colleagues have really spoken, we have also come up with an IMC where we are discussing the issue of better making sure that the intervention as it relates to disaster management happens in a much more coordinated way, but the planning part of it should also be ready so that we are not caught off guard, but we should then now be able to know that in the next coming months, if rain continues this way or if the wind continues this way, we will then now be able to say that we must be ready, we must evacuate people, or this is what we need to do. And it will also obviously be assisted by what the DG has spoken about, the National Special Development Plan framework, which is now been relocated to us in presidency, which I think will help us as it relates to mostly the issues of disaster management. But unfortunately, of course, legislation-wise, the mandate of disaster management lies with district municipalities in particular and local government. So maybe as we look at the issues of funding, we also have to look at better ways of making sure that as much as the delegation is there or the mandate is there, how do we better coordinate, which is what the Department of COGTA have been doing well with ourselves, of course, playing part in the monitoring of making sure that when we've got disasters, we're able to respond. So I think maybe it was it's not necessarily oversight, but we didn't really look much into making sure that we empower municipalities, and in particular district municipalities, to be able to deal with issues of disaster management in a better way. And I do believe that with the new reviewed integrated framework that we have in government, as the other colleague have already spoken to the issue, would then now be able to further make sure that we cement the issues of DDMs with making sure that we include the issues of disaster management. And as I've already said, I do believe that what is happening now will evolve into a better district models that would then now allow district municipalities to probably be defined in a different way, because clearly we definitely need to find a situation whereby, as it relates to service delivery, it happens in local government. Therefore, the better way of doing it is to make sure that at least we coordinate everything based on the district municipalities themselves. There have been talks, of course, where people were saying, especially in the NPC, the National Planning Commission, where people were saying, why don't we then now change the IDPs of district municipalities into the one plans that we have? So our district municipalities concentrate, of course, more on the issues that have been delegated to them, of course, by the minister and the legislation itself, but they should concentrate more on ensuring that the issues of DDMs are actually implemented in the way that they would be effective. So that's all that I have to say at this current moment. And thank you very much for allowing us to come and share. And I do believe that, of course, in terms of the 30-year review, you would also give us an opportunity to come and present it here. And it would then now speak to all the issues that have been raised, including the issues of service delivery and the Gini coefficient of South Africa. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Maybe just by way of summary, colleagues, firstly, Mr. Serfontein, you referred to a planning bill in Parliament. We have no such in Parliament. So that probably is between the department and cabinet. So that I clear that, DG, I don't like to leave unattended any throwaways. There's no bill, there's no planning bill in Parliament. The only bill we have, which we have attended to, is the Stats SA one, unless you would have done that in a previous committee. So that, just to clear that, DG, can you clarify that?
Yes, Chair, you are correct. It's between us and Cabinet. It has not reached Parliament. So
thank you. So we will wait for when you're done and ready, and then it can be said to be in Parliament. Otherwise, it's problematic to just throw it away like that, Mr. Serfontein. So please do that homework. That's the first point. The second point, colleagues, just to appreciate, I think, members have both appreciated but been also have problematized some of the issues that are coming out of the presentation. And I think we should embrace and welcome that. We appreciate the work that you have done so far. We regard it as work under construction, given, because the presentation itself, I think, demonstrate that you're trying to make the best out of this process. And I think the key issue that Honorable Manyi was harping on is important, that as we go forward, our expectation of DPME, this planning, monitoring, and evaluation in terms of the role, we expect that you play what I would call an all-encompassing coordinating role. All-encompassing coordinating role, playing the role of an enabler. Your strength has got to be on coordination, because you've got everybody else designated to do certain things. Planning, monitoring, and evaluation is about how those things are brought together, and you ensure and oversee how they are done. And so that has to be part of the homework, because it clearly defines the transversal nature of this department. And that's going to be the key issue we're going to oversight with you kind of going forward. So I want to emphasize that point. It is a very important point. And I think at the beginning, we had planned to have a workshop as a portfolio committee in order for us to make sense of our own of the mandate and the role of the department. We had pushed that back, given the things that have overtaken us. But maybe it's a blessing in disguise that at a point when we do that planning, we would have been informed by so many things, and by the time we sit down and do that, we would have done a proper orientation and would be able to indicate to you what our sense is about certain things. And so thank you very much. And thank you, Minister, for patiently sitting there and listening and giving us those closing remarks at the end. We certainly would welcome that in terms of the 30-year review. I know that in this month, we do, as part of our program, we expect that you would come here and present to us first the 10-year review of the NDP. We have programmed that, and so would start, and then perhaps later we'll deal with the 30-year review. Otherwise, thank you very much for your contribution, Minister, the DM in her absence, as well as the DG, as we step off this item to go to the minutes. Thank you. Honorable Manyi?
Thank you, Chair. No, Chair, I'm not going to mess up with your excellent summary. I'm very happy I'm covered with your summary. I just wanted to make one request that can be submitted later. Can we be presented with the impact report of sorts that is going to reflect on the various key performance areas that Mr. Serfontaine was just mentioning at a high level? Can we just get that clearly? What are the key performance indicators and what has been the impact measured by those key performance indicators? I mean, the one on inequality was one that I'm not terribly impressed with the outcome, but maybe the others are better, I don't know. Can we get that report submitted? Chair, if you can just contract with them on time. Thank you.
Thank you. That's in order. It can be done. We'll ensure as a committee that we remind them on that. Thank you very much, Honorable Manyi. Ms. Moy and Mr. Ngwepe, can we now have the minutes tabled?
Morning, Chairperson.
Thank you. Over to you. Take us through page by page in those minutes for corrections if members have. Go ahead.
Okay, Chairperson, in front of us are the minutes of the 27th of October. a briefing by Status A on the census 2022 results. First page is the attendance of members.
Thank you.
Page 2, Status A, attendance, Parliament staff. Page 3 is the deliberations of members. Page 4, continuation. Continuation. Page 5, summary by the chairperson. Consideration of and adoption of minutes of the 20th of October. Page 6, conclusion. Thank you, Chairperson. Those are the minutes of the 27th of October.
Honorable members, these minutes would have been sent to you, so they are taken as read. Any corrections? And is there any member who moves for the adoption of the minutes? Honorable Pillay.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. I move for the adoption of the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Pillay. Is there a seconder? Honorable Manyi.
Yeah, Chairperson, I second the minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Manyi. Minutes duly adopted. Thank you, and that's the last item of our agenda. Thank you to everybody in the meeting. The time now is just 4 minutes after 11. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you.